how do you connect with your clients? That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to communicate as salespeople. We're trying to get on the same page with our clients, trying to get that open, honest, authentic communication going with them so that they understand what we're talking about and we understand what they're talking about. That's what we're going to talk about today. I think you're really going to like this episode. We're really going to dig into how people think, how people communicate, how to communicate with them, because this is what we do all day long. We're professional communicators. It's a performance profession. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it and how you connect with the other person. And it's easy to get burnt out. We do it all day. We get rejection all day. But how do we stay at top of our game? How do we make sure that we understand the other person and can connect and communicate with them? Let's get into the episode. And one of the ways to connect with people is through video email. You know it. Go video. It's the way to do it today. Text, it's just the words. There's no facial expression. There's no vocal tonality. There's no passion. There's no excitement in text. Oh, yeah, I can put an emoji in there. Okay, good luck with that. Video email's the future. Check it out at covideo.com. Let's get into the interview. And at the end, for anybody in the courses, I'll give you an update. Here we go. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a former New York Life agent. I'm a former Xeroid or Xerox rep. And then I took the big leap 26 years ago and became a professional speaker. And I guess I had that tangible and intangible sales under my belt and really wanted to take that message out to the world. I've got 2.5 million miles in the air. Hit every state but two, and get out of the country once or twice a year as well. So it's a wonderful speaking business. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Cool. And what was the passion behind that? Because that's a pretty big jump, going from a rep to a speaker. There must be some part of it that you saw missing, that you felt so strongly about, that you really wanted to share with the world.
Well, that's a great question. It's interesting because I'm actually, and you'll find this in most speakers, sort of a frustrated actor. I did act in my 20s. I met my wife in a show. I loved acting, but I went, this looks a little too scary to raise a family and on. So I found the next best thing. I started really falling in love with corporate training. So when I sold for New York Life, I then became a trainer for New York Life. When I sold for Xerox, I became a trainer, actually ran Xerox's customer training division, and which kind of taught me how to run a training business. So I get my acting fix on one side, and I get to talk about something I truly love, which is persuasion and influence. And so I think I mentor people who are in career transition. And one of my favorite sayings is, usually you don't find your career, it finds you. Yeah. And I think that kind of happened with me.
Yeah, it happened with me too. Now, you also wrote a couple of books. What do you see people doing wrong today? Are they just getting too wrapped up in their own head, that they're not understanding the other person? What's your viewpoint on it?
Yeah, it's funny. Here's a book that found me. For the last 7 years, I've been volunteering every Tuesday night when I'm in town for a group that handles people who are in career transition. And I went in as a speaker. They just invited me in to speak. I thought, all right, I'll go down the road. I'll go talk to a dozen people. And there were 200 people in the room. Yeah. And I really saw the face of this 40 to 65-year-old kind of forgotten group that has been merged out or, have lost their mid-level management positions. But I also saw an enormous amount of emphasis on resumes, elevator pitches, LinkedIn sites, which are important, but it was words, words, and words. What I didn't, and the words weren't failing these people. The tune was failing these people, how they were saying the words. And I even thought as an author, I keep putting processes and ideas in front, but I've never really stopped and said, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Yeah. So I could write it down and hand it to somebody, but it sounds completely different. So that's this book that found me. And as I mentored people, week after week, month after month, year after year, I began to really focus on how do we find the authentic voice? How do we sound more believable? And isn't that a part of selling, as a matter of fact? So that's how this kind of came to be for me.
Yeah, I kind of had that epiphany myself, probably within the last probably 6 weeks. A little late in career,
Quick, but yeah.
Well, I think you have it all the time, but in different ways, right? Yours was acting, mine was being goofy and comic.
Right.
Instead of trying to be professional and presenting the idea in the most well thought out way, I presented in a hilarious, silly, isn't it obvious how dumb this is not to do this type
Right.
way. And
Right,
it
right.
engages people. And I call it kind of mammal to mammal selling, where you take away that human professional level and let's get down to how the brain really works. Right? Because
Yep.
if you're not into it, they're not going to be into it. You've got to find that emotion and that rapport with them.
Oh, I totally agree. And actually, it's funny you said it because, again, we keep talking about here's a sales process. Here's a sales process. Everybody wants to look on that one side of the aisle. A lot of times, for instance, I work a lot with in the financial industry, and I work a lot in with mutual fund companies who are actually selling the reps. And the reps are constantly, give me a sales process. And when I go into those buildings and when I teach my clients is, you want a sales idea? I'll give you a sales idea. How about study the repeatable, predictable decision pattern your customers go through?
Yeah.
Let's not worry about you right now. If I could prove to you that they're going through 6 stages, 3 decision points, would that be of value to you? You think you might want to start there, or would you like me to give you a script of some sort, or or just go in and say these 4 things, and then magically a sale will just fall out of the sky and pop you in the head?
Yeah.
No, it's amazing what happens when you really focus on the cycles the clients go through. It gives you perspective. It gives you a place where now really you're following a more strategic decision path of don't need it, really need it, probably don't need that. But nothing real, although we teach it this way, nothing really starts at step 1 and goes to step 8. A lot of times we start at step 4, we drop back to 3, we move up to 6. But I think where you find people who are successful is they learn a process and then they learn how to manage that process.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
Now, a psychologist would call that outward mindset, meaning that you're starting to think like your client. I think what you would call client-centric selling.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the difference between great salespeople and okay salespeople. When you come up with a process, you're trying to find somebody who matches that process, who has that need, that awareness, that curiosity and interest already established. But especially like financial sales, that's typically not true, right? You're finding somebody all over the map.
Yeah. It's funny. I wrote a piece one time, and it was called "Teaching Salespeople to Fail," and I meant it nicely, but there's so many things we do that are really not helping our sales force. For instance, even the way we typically train them. Remember, I'm doing this 26 years. Sometimes when I feel like poking an audience, I'll ask a sales group, how many of you have ever been sales trained before? And they go,
Yeah.
And I go, how many of you have been sales trained at least a dozen times in your career? And then what we realize when we really strip it away is you've rarely been sales trained. You've been product trained.
Yeah.
Someone called it sales training. And so right off the bat, the first thing we lose is the most critical thing that we need to gain, which is, of course, asking questions and listening. Well, if I teach you here the 7 principles of this bottle of water, now go sell it.
Yeah.
What do you think I'm going to do? Ask you about what kind of water you drink? No, I'm going to go, here are the 7 principles are, and we're feature benefit. It's actually unusual and rare when you find a group that says, well, have you ever learned a process of how to get people to want those features and what's in your head and what to do after you give all those features and benefits? I don't need to teach you the features and benefits.
Yeah.
You're getting doused in that all the time. Even continuing education. Oh, I want to bang on my head when I say this. Even continuing education that is required in most companies, sales and outside of sales. It's rarely about how to communicate.
Yeah.
It's more about more product, more product. So we beat our clients down, and and we feel like, but I got trained. Nah, you got product trained. Somebody forgot to tell you that.
Yeah. So how do you start with that? How do you build those questions up to see where the client is, to take them that latent pain, the pain that they're not feeling but have, and turn it into active pain, pain that they have and feel?
Well, already you just passed a test with me because you're using the word pain. Okay. And now we're going to process. Love it. So the first thing we have to do is we have to earn the right to get to the pain.
Yeah.
I can't walk and go, hi, I don't know if I'm Adam, but do you have problems the way you interview people? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going to answer that. I've been for almost 20 years, I have been polling audiences and clients about where they are in decision cycles. And it's usually shocking to people when I tell them it's about 4.5% of the world that truly doesn't have a problem in wherever you are, whatever space you're in.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, you don't know my clients. Half of them tell me that they're totally fine. Well, right off the bat, when I go, hi, how are you, Rob Jallis? Do you have issues with your car? Because I happen to sell cars. Of course, people aren't going to tell the truth because they're thinking, oh, my goodness, if I answer yes to that, I'm going to have to buy something. Yeah. So before we get to the pain, we get to trust, right? And that actually very overlooked. I mean, a lot of times, even in training, we go, okay, first create trust. Now, the second stage, whoa, if we don't do a good job here, nothing else really matters. Everything becomes anemic from here on in. And yet, it's challenging to process trust. Funny thing, it's easier to process the pain than trust. So, but I can give you some pointers very quickly. One, we got to ask questions, but we've got to keep those questions open. It's not an interrogation. It's a conversation. The way you and I are having a conversation right now, you're not interrogating me. We're talking. Okay. Yeah. So now remember, everybody's learned what an open question is, a question that can't be answered yes or no. But I'm a guy who goes out with smartphones and micro cassettes and goes, hey, just sell something. I don't even hear questions. And when I do, they're never open. Do you, are you, can you, will you, should you? No. How, why, tell, describe. If you're from California, share. But keep the questions open. Yeah. Number two, stay away from the problem for right now. But number three, a little bit challenging, which is begin to consider your strengths. So, I'm drinking a water with a koozie on it. It's keeping my water cold. If I wanted to sell the koozie, I don't want to say, do you have problems with your... No, I just want to know, how long do you typically take to drink that water? Yeah. How do you keep it cold? I'm not asking you a problem. If you tell me, funny, I just pop it on my desk and get
clean it up later.
Hey, now I'm starting to learn where we may be able to go. So playing your strengths, a lot of companies struggle with this, is you got to figure out what do you want the client to want?
Exactly.
And some of the biggest corporations actually struggle with that. They don't, when I work with a couple of car companies. When you say, okay, it's a great car, but what's great about it? Well, it's really fast. Okay, well, everyone's going to concede that to you. Well, we're very good at customer service. Yeah. Everybody. Tighten that down, then build the questions to see if there's a piece that, so it's keep it open. I'm almost done with this. Sorry to take you so long. It's keep it open. It's avoid the problem. It's play your strengths, or as Covey said, begin with the end in mind. And by golly, number 4, it is listen. That means don't interrupt the customer. Even though you're going, finish.
Hurry up.
Let them go. It's very important. We have stats on this. I'll save them I'll spare you from them, but I can give you the top 20 listening habits to avoid. And the first half of them together don't equal the number 1, which is people hate to be interrupted. If we do those 4 things, then we begin to earn the right to get to, let's double back. You mentioned that you take a little time on the water there. What sort of difficulties does that create in terms of keeping it cold and fresh? Now we're beginning to get to the pain. And we can talk about that more, but I just want to show you how we get there.
Now, what's your view on trust? What does it mean to you, and why is it so important?
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's even I was a manager. I wasn't a great manager. I'm a great
Showed up.
speaker. I like to think I'm a great speaker. I'm great at certain things. Not great on painting either. But I wasn't a great manager because I gave trust. I wanted to trust my people, and sometimes that's not reciprocated. I'm not weeping about it. We learn about ourselves. For me, trust is everything. It's everything.
Why?
And for most, why? Um, it's a very good question. It's one of those things where when it's lost, it's so hard to replace. Like I can't say, well, you disappointed me this time, but I'm sure you'll come through the next time. You usually get one shot at it, don't you?
Well, that's it. And if you
Yeah.
don't have it, are they going to believe anything you say or ask? I think it's the bandwidth of communication.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's people think it's overrated. People want to race by it. People even processing it, you could see a little tougher than it looks. And it's one of those things where we know it when we see it. But I guess to cement that answer, to cement that answer is you get one shot at it. You don't get two. And
right.
and just like as a speaker, by the way, and for many things, for me, I'm as good as the last presentation I deliver. I'm as good as the last interview that I'm on. You're as good as the last interview you conduct.
Right.
So we work our tail off to say,
Build
listen, it won't be due to a lack of effort. If you interview 100 people a year, one's going to be the best, one's going to be the weakest, and 98 are going to be somewhere in the middle. But I'd like to think you and I share something, which is it will never be because we're not fighting and hustling and giving it everything we have. Well, trust is that way too.
Yeah.
I'm going to try as hard as I can because I don't want to disappoint. It's really hard to get it back when we do.
Well, that's it, because you're not going to get that openness. They're going to become defensive. They're not going to expose that pain unless they see something in it for them. And I kind of view trust as you care more about them than just your transaction.
That's a great point. In one of my books, it's called How to Change Minds, and I'm not pumping books, but the tagline is the art of influence without manipulation. And oftentimes I'll ask, because remember, that's if people are listening to this and go, well, I don't sell stocks and insurance or Xerox covers. Is this really for me? Yeah, it is. And what holds most people back? Well, they say, well, I don't want to manipulate people. So let's start there.
Yeah.
What's the difference between manipulation and influence? And the answer is one word. It's intent. It is, if what I'm about to do is really going to be good for me, maybe good for you, but I need this sale, I'm manipulating you.
Yeah.
If what I'm about to show you has the potential to save your business or a key client or a key employee or help you progress or evolve, then I'm going to ask the pain questions. I'm okay with it. And people will thank me. They don't see it as pain. They actually see me as problem solving. Yeah. When somebody gives you the gift to say, I've never told anyone this before, but what really concerns me is bang. Imagine if my answer is, ooh, now tell me how you got to work today. Let's not talk about that anymore. Yeah. Why wouldn't we talk about that some more? But we got to let them paint the picture, don't we? We got to lay back. But it's all about intent. And one last thing, before we just think, well, why would I want to, particularly in sales, why would my intent be off? Let me throw a 10-second scenario at you. You're in a sales contest. You're looking at a big bonus. You got 3 days to go.
Well,
and you need one more good-sized sale.
I think it's counterintuitive not to have our intent off and about ourselves.
Right.
We have to proactively.
Exactly. You know what the challenge is down the road? And I don't know the answer exactly, but I've actually, in my later stages of life, I've actually begun to look at and question sales contests because they create an unhealthy environment to manipulate people. Because like I said, I'd never do it. I'm always going to do what's right by my client. I'm sure you are. But like I said, you're this close to a cruise to Alaska. and you got a client sitting in front of you, and maybe this isn't the best solution for them at this time.
Yeah.
It's more challenging than it looks. So I have empathy for people who struggle with it, but the definition is fairly simple. It's all about intent.
That's it. And I think a lot of people look at it as fluff,
Hmm.
as opposed to something that's concrete and necessary. Not only the intent, but the trust that you need to build. Because if you don't have it, everything you say, and that's why cold calling isn't as effective, because people try and skip the trust building stage.
Right.
And they go
Exactly.
completely about them, trying to make it so enticing. And, the big fat claims that were taught in the 90s. And that gets people's curiosity. But pretty soon they figure out that it is just a big fat claim.
Right.
And
And even in a cold call, what you just described, how many times do we have people that think in a cold call, I'm going to sell something? Well,
get an order.
okay, yeah, good luck with that. That's why the numbers aren't real good. But if we change it and said, well, what if you want to sell something? Just get an appointment. Just get a cup of coffee. Get a conversation. Don't worry about the product right now. Create enough of a whiffum. What's in it for me? Okay,
Yeah.
enough to say, it might be worthwhile, even if it's a phone conversation, next week to spend 15 minutes to hear more or talk more about that opportunity. But I don't really need to go from soup to nuts in 4.5 minutes and somehow think I'm going to create trust, understand your business,
Right.
and apply a solution to it and close you. And people go, boy, this sales thing is pretty hard. Well, if I said in 4.5 minutes, could you get me to trust you? That's actually possible. Okay. I'm not saying 10 out of 10,
Yeah.
but your numbers will look a lot better. So that's why even with the pharmaceutical companies I work with, who are walking backwards down the hallway with doctors going from one room to another, we're getting them off of the product and just seeing in that space of time down that hallway, can you say something compelling enough for that doctor turn around and go, next Tuesday I have 20 minutes. Come there. I'll talk to you about this. But stop selling in 4 minutes. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Because I think people are trying to be efficient instead of effective. Another Coveyism that I'm sure you're very familiar with. And I think the management kind of pushes that too, because, they have the KPIs and the metrics and stuff, but people on the other end don't care about that. And, and there's this, I don't know if you know Goodhart's law, where it's like, as soon as you start measuring something, it quits being of value, like number of calls.
Wow. I've never heard that before. And on another call, I'd love to hear that, a little more about that one, because that makes
like
me
the
scratch
economy.
my head.
Look at just the Dow as a signal of the economy. It's not, once you start measuring it, it starts having the real effect. What ends up happening is people game it, like unemployment. They stop counting these type of people and only count these type of people.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And even revenue, if they go after the easiest possible revenue versus what's right for the client and what's right for the company. And that's why it takes like a Bezos, who's customer focused. It's his money. He makes sure that the company's like that, as opposed to a hired CEO who cares about, like a Tim Cook, who cares about his stock and, how well the company's doing on earnings. It was a difference between like Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer.
Sure.
You got an accountant versus a technologist, right?
Right. Even at Xerox, we had a change in CEOs from David Kearns, my era, who brought quality in, and I met him a couple of times, and he kept his quality card in his pocket. That's the CEO. We were going to commit to quality improvement and problem solving. By golly, Xerox did, and they were one of the best companies ever to implement. And then the next guy was more of the bean counter. I'll leave the name out. And very interested in the Xerox stock, but not as much the processes and the culture that we had established. And if there was a jump the shark moment for a corporation, that was it. It's funny how that happens.
And what do you see that as distinctions between the very best reps, the top 1%, versus the middle of the ground, the B player?
It's a deep answer, but when you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you what hits me first. Okay, And the funny thing is, I mean, the top reps, it is a compulsion to keep learning, to keep getting better. Just
Yeah.
like a superstar athlete. A great athlete makes it to the NBA. A superstar, still the first one in the morning to shoot, the last one in the evening to leave, looking for anything to
Any
get
distinction.
1% better.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones right below it are like, well, my numbers are pretty good, and that is really not going to gain me that much. Why would I want to do it? Real fast story, but
Go
and
ahead.
I'm going to date myself, but why not? Uh, when I started working for New York Life, we got this funny thing in called a video camera. And we were going to videotape agents. We had almost 70 agents in the Washington GO. And the apprentice field unders, AFUs, there were 23, 24 of us, required. Everyone else optional. In that office we had, it was a big, hard-hitting office. 5 what was called chairman's council agents, top 2.5% of the company. The only ones to be videotaped were the AFUs required, and every single top of the line agent, all
Yeah.
5 of those requested to be videoed. All the ones in the middle, they were busy.
Yeah. Busy. But that brings up a great point, because I always view sales as a performance profession, meaning that you get nothing really for putting in your time, right? Because like you as a speaker, you're only as good as your last performance, your reputation, what people
Mhm,
say about you, your YouTube videos.
mhm.
And each speech is a performance, and each sales call is a performance. No client cares about how long you've been doing this,
Right,
what your credentials are, what your resume looks like. It's what you're going to do for them.
right,
And I think the video thing is something that really emphasizes that somebody's brave enough to look at themselves,
right.
want
Well,
to, not
yeah,
just willing to, but want to,
right.
because we're pretty hard critics on ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. As we go down this path, uh, I've always been an author who wrote about processes. Xerox drilled it into me. When you have a process, you have a way of measuring what you're doing. When you can
Yeah.
measure it, you can fix it. And I believe that. And yet, when I started straying into this topic of why people don't believe us and how to build credibility, there isn't really a repeatable, predictable process. There's a series of moves, and each one increases our chances this much. And I find myself in front of audiences saying frequently, I know what I'm telling you doesn't seem like it's going to get you a big hit. It's going to make you this much better. But if you don't want those percentage points, give them to me. I'll take them because I've got. What happens when we're on the 8th one and the 9th one? All of a sudden, we label people as lucky when they're doing process behaviors that are actually increasing their chances of success. So sometimes in a perfect world, we have this repeatable, predictable process. Sometimes we just have things that we need to do that we're unsure how much gain we'll get, but I know one thing: we won't get worse being videotaped. We
Yeah.
won't get worse doing these process behaviors. And that's where I'm settling in now as a speaker and as a consultant, which is, I think for a lot of us, that's what we need to look for. It's like playing blackjack. A 15 is better than a 14. Not much, but a little. Give me another. Give me one. Can make it a 16? Still not great, but I want to keep playing the best odds I can. And there are process behaviors that are being ignored because they're not massive gains, and that disappoints me.
Yeah. I think everybody's looking for the 3 to 5x, as
Right.
opposed to just that 1% every day, by
Yep.
maybe asking yourself a few questions before the call. Like,
Yeah.
if I was them, what would I care about? What
Yeah.
stage are they at?
Right. And let's make up a number. Let's pretend what you just described. I have a theory on this. I've done some research, and it says by listing those questions, you will be 4% more effective on the call. People will yawn at that. I
Yeah.
won't. I won't, because guess what? We're going to do that. Oh, and we're also going to do some research on their website. That's going to get us another 3%. We're going to actually go through LinkedIn, see if we know anybody, and see if we can do some reconnaissance work over there too. That got us another 2. There's so many little things that we could do. All of a sudden, they snowball together, and by golly, we're having a pretty good year. I'm getting pretty lucky. You can call it luck. I think it's something different.
Yeah, cool. Are you working on a new book, or are you?
I am.
Are you?
But I can't. I don't want to talk.
No. Okay.
Well, I won't. I won't give you the title, but it
Yeah.
deals a lot with things that we do um, that are instinctive, but that aren't logical. And in other words, some of the things we're talking about right now, I don't think we've defied logic in our conversation today. And yet, most of what we're talking about is really not all that instinctive.
It's not.
And
Yeah.
that's what really kind of trips us up a little bit, doesn't it? So
I
I'm
think, yeah,
exploring that.
I'm big on that, and that there's so many things about sales that are counterintuitive,
Right,
that our mammal brain blocks us from seeing them.
right, right.
That a lot of things like curiosity, that outward mindset, that is a very evolved thing.
Yeah,
There's a thing called other minds, and they say, oh, you develop this when you're 6 years old. I know people who are 60 and haven't developed it.
right,
It's the being able to understand how someone else is thinking, not just feeling, based off of the context
right,
of what they're going through.
right,
And
right.
that's all very mature or evolved processes that are not intuitive.
Yeah, sure is logical, but look, one of the things we talked about, I think one of the most important moves a salesperson can make once we've got the trust, we talked about pain. There in again, most people have heard about it. The greatest thing I learned in a decade at Xerox, and it's one move. It's when you establish the pain. When you say, I just want to. I'm curious about one thing. We were talking earlier, and you said this, but you mentioned you really aren't doing that right now. What sort of challenges is that creating over here? And they go, yeah, I'm probably losing some clients that way. What is the instinct? Well, with us, you won't have to worry about that anymore because we offer a client retention system. Okay, and off we go. Okay, that's instinctive. Sure. Look, they just told you that's a problem and you have a solution for it. But logically, that would be the worst move to make.
Yeah.
Logically, what we'd want to do is say, tell me more about that. When did you first realize? How many clients do you think that's affecting? What impact is that having on revenue? Because most people didn't just wake up this morning, get hit on a coconut on their head and say, I got a problem with client retention. They've known about it for 3 years. They keep having conversations about it. This might be your annual call for them to whine a little, and you keep putting a Band-Aid on it. Why aren't we going deeper? It certainly is logical, but it is not instinctive.
Implication questions. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now you're dealing with Rackham. Yeah.
Well, which all came out of Xerox.
Oh, exactly. And every Xeroid who's a consultant like me has a version. Neil Rackham is a genius, spin selling, late 70s, brilliant. And we need, he's a British scientist. We needed a scientist to study our profession because Rackham was funny. We were all clinging to needs-based selling. Everybody buys based on needs. Our job, ask them what they need. Rackham was a guy, and scientists are funny. They just look at the data. They don't care. Yeah. And that Rackham was the first guy who kind of said, well, you can keep doing that, but quite frankly, research says it all starts with the problem. And until you study the problem deeply enough, the only people walking around with needs are and that's good
active
news.
People, active pain,
right?
The emergency room.
Yeah. Right, we can whistle and call down an order taker because I need something to keep my order cold. I sell that. Hey, I'm a salesman. Well, you took a good order today. How about the one who says it doesn't get that warm and it doesn't happen that often. So I'll think about it. And by the way, your price is high. So, so I feel no sense of urgency. So in actuality, I think that is the wheelhouse of selling. And you talk about logic versus instinct. It's all over it.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, tell us about the type of talks you give and what's the right type of organization to get the most out of it.
Thank you. Well, I go all over the world. I'm usually talking about persuasion influence, but I deal with over 50 financial institutions. However, I put on seminars for NASA, over a dozen of them. I work with hostage negotiators, 750 polygraph examiners, Disney, Toyota. My point is, when we deal with persuasion and influence, even for managers, The definition of my point, by the way, and now tell me which client we don't have. My definition of selling really is the art of taking an idea, putting it in somebody else's brain, and making them feel like they thought of it.
Yeah.
Now, who did we just leave out there? So I even have parents showing up, but I deal a lot with persuasion and influence. So my clientele is fairly large. And I also work with other professional speakers, and I train speakers. I work from some of the publishers who will send me their more celebrity authors that aren't used to speaking. So I quite frankly, the easiest way to kind of figure out what I do is I write something called a blarticle. I trademarked it, by the way. It's a blog article, and I come out with it every 2 weeks. And I'm just trying to drip information out to my clients and friends, and that's really how you learn a lot about me on my website.
And where is that?
I didn't want to crowbar it in exactly, but well, you've asked, so I'll tell you. It's JOLLES.com. And I just had a blarticle appear today, which, it's funny. I'm 10 years. I have 290 blarticles on the site because I am methodical. Every 2 weeks, I'll write one. But I wrote about can anybody sell, and today, which is, I'm not sure why it took me so long to put that one out there. But it kind of gets at your question, which is a lot of people put up their hand and say, A, I don't think I sell, and B, I'm not real good at it anyway. I am the worst salesperson. Look, you brought up Neil Rackham. Did you ever hear of Ben Feldman?
Ben Feldman, the guy from Silver Spring?
No, not that Ben Feldman. This was, but nice try. I guess there's a few of them. Ben Feldman sold for the New York Life Insurance Company. He had not one attribute you'd associate with a great salesperson. I mean, he was large. He had hair like Larry on the Three Stooges. He spoke with a distinct pronounced lisp, and he sold $1.6 billion of insurance. Just one quick number. When I sold, and I had some good years, at one point I was number 11 at New York Life out of 750 agents. 7,500 agents. So I was moving insurance. Ben Feldman was number one. His year in a pool of $250,000. Okay, that's Prue, Matt, money. Okay, 250,000 agents. He was number one. Number two sold $51 million of insurance. Ben sold $153 million worth. And you could barely hear him when he spoke. He left amazing legacies, but one of his greatest was anybody can sell as long as we commit to who we are and really get in touch with our own style. We merge style with technique. We're great.
What you say is just part of it. It's how you say it. It's how you connect with other people and knowing what they're going through, that empathy. And empathy is something that we all think we're good at, but very few of us are. And it's not ours to judge. It's the other person's. The ability to put yourself in their shoes, understand what they're feeling, what they're sensing, what their mammal brain is doing right now. Because if you don't understand it, you don't know what to say or how to say it. You got to connect with the other person. And this is really what I teach in the courses, is how to guide the other person through a decision-making process, how to lead them, how to have direction, momentum, and control over your deals and your conversations. And it's not a script. It's teaching you how people change, how they make purchase decisions, how they want to connect with another human being. And this is something that you don't either know or don't know. It's how good are you at it? Anybody can sing, but very few people can get paid to sing. And we are professional salespeople. This is how we get paid. Our variable comp is based on how well we do it. And time's running out this year. I don't know when you're listening to it, but there isn't much time this year. And it's time to settle in and make yourself better every day. And the way to do that is to listen to other people, what they're going through, and to talk through your deals. Get out of your head, get someone else's eyes on the deal, look at it from a different person's perspective, answer some hard questions about it so that you win the deal. Why work so hard for these deals if you're not going to get paid for them? Why? Look at your pipeline. Everybody wants 3x their pipeline. That's what I call lucky pipeline. I have no control over these things, or if I put enough in there, something's going to come through. Well, that's one approach. That's the shotgun approach. But most of us are not in the shotgun business. We're in the sniper business. We're trying to pick out the deals that can and will close, and that we can close them. And to be able to do that, it takes judgment and skills and strategy. And those things just don't happen. You have to proactively build them. You have to think through them. And you have to be guided through them. And what waste your time, that is your real money. The money in your pocket is nothing compared to the amount of time that we spend. Think about it. Take the income that you want to make, divide it by 2,000, and that's what you get paid per hour. Now, if you waste an hour, which I'm sure you've wasted many today, that is the real money. The money that you invest in yourself, that is the highest ROI you'll ever get, more than any 401k or stock or real estate investment. It's you. You are the means of production if you're in sales. You're the machine, and the machine needs maintenance, it needs development. Sometimes it needs fixing. Sometimes it just needs to be put in the right direction, and needs a little analysis, a little reflection to get you focused again. So go to b2brevenue.com and check out the courses. Schedule a time. Go to training. Hit the calendar link. Get on my calendar. Go check out the courses. See which one fits for you. There's two major ones. There's Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting. This teaches you how to look at your territory, prioritize it, and get into every account you want to. Start the conversation with them that can build from unawareness to commitment all the way through. The other one is Closing the Complex Sale. I'll teach you how large companies make purchase selections and how to map that process out. Instead of reacting to their requests, hoping that they're going to order something, and then falling down on no decision. Cut it out. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your career. You can never get this time back. You can always make more money. And that's what we're going to do, baby. We're going to make you more money. Okay? So go there, b2brevenue.com. and check it all out. And in the show notes, I give a little email if you want to try and convince your manager to pay for it. Just expense it. Make it smell like gas. No one's going to know. Jesus, everybody's, oh, my money. Brian, it's my money. Oh, you want to make more money? You got to get better at sales. That's the only way. Or you can try and get lucky. Okay, good luck with that. You know, all this talk about a recession, believe me, a recession is going to wash out all the B players. So make sure you're an A player before that recession kicks in, whenever it is. You know, for the last 9 years, I've been saying, oh, no, things are looking great. I think things still look great. But, you know everybody. Superstitious. We'll see you next time. Make sure you're liking my stuff on LinkedIn. I appreciate that. Check out the YouTube channel, Maverick Method on YouTube, if you want to watch the videos of these podcasts. And tell a friend, just one friend, about the brutal truth.